Hey woodworkers, we are talking about sharpening a scraper today, the traditional way, so using a file and a burnisher. So the principles work for any kind of scraper. This is a rectangular size or shaped scraper, and these are good for flat work. So dragging this thing across and getting shavings, this is good. If I had a curved piece, one way or the other, maybe something like a gooseneck scraper would be a better fit. But sometimes the gooseneck is not quite the arc that you're looking for. And so, you can modify this one, taking this to a bench grinder, keeping that bed at 90 degrees to where the wheel is, just rotating this until the shape fits whatever your needs are. And then these ones, tighter radius here, and then you have a concave and a convex. All of the principles that we're going to talk about work on all of those. What we're looking for is getting better shavings than this. And so actually these ones may seem quasi-respectable because some of these are fairly long. What I'm looking for is, at this point, I would need to sharpen. If I'm only getting dust, which it actually feels like it's cutting better. If I'm only getting dust and not really those shavings, then it's time for this one to be sharpened. The good news is sharpening a scraper takes about 4 minutes if you're not describing the process, but it takes forever to learn because I think a lot of people are really concerned about complexity and difficulty with these, but there's really not a whole lot to it. This is a better example. So compared to the shavings that you're getting, where are you, camera? There we are. All right, so shavings here, slightly longer pieces. This is coming off in bigger curls, kind of like you would expect from a hand plane. This stuff is just powder here. There's no fibrous connections with this. So this one is definitely in need of some attention. So maybe for that reason, I'll start with this. Okay, so scraper has 4 surfaces that can cut. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can also sharpen these as well, but where you hold this, I don't want these things to be sharp where I'm engaging with, and I can kind of stay away if I'm if I'm cutting here, I know that I can hold on these outside edges, no problem. If I needed to use this, then just the opposite. I would flatten these areas out so I can sharpen on this edge. All right, so in essence, what I have approached is that this is phase 1 of your scraper. We've got these little horns here and here that, looking at the tool in this orientation, those are being asked to do the work for making shavings. If there's not a lot of material there, in other words, if there's not enough extension of these things at the right angle to really dig into the wood and in order to remove material, it's never going to do any good. And this is not, well, this is a good way to get nowhere fast. So what I'm going to do is go to phase 2, which is I'm going to totally remove any of those little horns that may exist at all. And so in order to do that, I need something called a burnisher. This one has a teardrop shape. I'm not sure if you can see this. Most of the time they're just a cylinder, hardened steel. This one I've purchased, but these are also the same kind of metal is used in valve stems for engines. So going to a mechanic, if they have any, this is an easy way to get. All right, so what I'm looking for here is to keep the burnisher nice and flat onto the face of the scraper. What I'm going to do, I want to have this supported onto a bench or whatever. Just a couple of drags here until I can't feel any more of those horns engage anywhere. I'll do that on both of these faces. And if I weren't recording this, I would do the other 2 as well, but for the purposes today, I'm just going to do this side. So I'll make a little mark here. Can I make a mark? I would like to make a mark. All right, so this is the one that we're going to do. All right, so at this point, I've lifted off those little horns, and they should be flattened up top just like this. So these ones are going to be raised up here. I need to now create newer cutting surfaces, and that's what I'm going to do with Sage 3. So now that those former surfaces for cutting are raised up, it's going to be easy enough to chop them down. Chopping them down, we would use with traditionally a really fine file. So I have two different examples. This one is a mill bastard file, which means it has teeth that are cut in both directions, usually used for metalworking. So we've got metal cutting file, which is great. I would never be able to use a rasp or anything like a riffler or anything like that. That's more wood intended. So it has to be dead flat and then have really fine teeth for cutting. So a mill bastard file, this one is a finer rating here. It's a triangular shape, but much finer teeth, and this is the one I have handy, and when this one dulls, then I'll just buy another one. The thing about files is that they are intended to be pushed in only one direction. So primarily this would be where a handle would go. This is going to function as the handle. I'm going to hold it with my right hand, and then as I'm using this, I'm always pushing away from myself, lifting it back up, and starting the cut again. If I were to cut in this orientation and then not lift it, not raise this thing up, and drag this back, in essence, I'm just dulling the file. So I need to cut here, raise it up, start over, go all the way through, and so on and so forth. Files don't typically dull with woodworking, but you introduce metal to this, or worse yet, if you leave these in a bag together and then walk around with these things, they'll start to do a number on each other, which is not fun. Okay, so I've set up this scraper into my vise, and I've teed it up a little bit taller than probably ordinarily do, but I needed to set it up tall enough so that my hand has enough clearance so that it's not pushing on the bench. In other words, if there's less clearance here, it's going to start changing the angle on the top edge of this scraper. All right, so setting up here, I need to get a sense or watch for making sure that this file, as it's being dragged across the scraper, is always going to be horizontal, or more specifically 90 degrees to the surface of this scraper. All right, so a couple passes, just like so. What I was trying to show there is if I'm dragging this file across the scraper in this orientation, I want to make sure that I'm getting good consistent coverage all the way across. There are some jigs that will allow you to embed the file into a bench hook looking thing, something similar to this, and then cut out a little recess so that this is clamped into place, and then it allows you to drag your scraper across this way, and that's okay. I really prefer to be able to see this top edge. Nope, there's no way you can see that. I want to see how shiny this top edge of the scraper is, because I'll be able to see the shiny new metal where the file has made contact, and if it's still dull, I know I have to work more in that area, and then left and right as well. So I like to see the edge that I'm working on, know what I'm doing. All right, so that looks, let me just do one more or two more quick passes. What I'm feeling for now, you kind of hear the tonal change. I also like to drag a fingernail or a thumbnail across this because I can see and feel. I can feel where the drag is more aggressive. I can also hear, if I stop talking, one tone where I'm not really getting a lot of cutting action happening. And then when I go to an area, it's a little sharper here. That may or may not be coming through. Anyway, it sounds fantastic to me. Yeah, that's good. So it feels consistent all the way across. One more for good luck. won't be able to see this, I don't think, but I'm going to try it anyway. So what you might not be able to see here is that I'm able to leave consistent shavings for my nails on these areas, and that's what I'm after. All right, so I'm happy with that. Now we've gone into phase 3. I've got these nice long sections here that are going to be the cutting edges. Now this is good, but if I were to introduce that shape onto the board, I don't have those horns in the right orientation, and so they're not really going to grab in the right way. If they're 90 degrees to the long axis here, they're going to shear off much more effectively or whenever I try to cut. So I need to do two things. I need to get to this orientation where they're just breaking 90, but I need to do this step first, which seems really counterintuitive, but it has everything to do with realigning molecules and other metallurgy magic that I'm told is what we're doing this for. It could all be a lie. They could have just sold us a bill of goods that we're just buying now, hook, line, and sinker. Okay, this should look reminiscent to what I did before. I want to make sure I'm in. Oops, it is not. Sorry, everyone. So I'm keeping this thing nice and flat, and then I'm just going to drag this back and forth. This is the thing I was describing earlier that apparently you didn't see. Sorry. All right. So I can't really feel any of those horns now, which is good. So these things are teeing up kind of straight in this orientation here. The last step I need to do is way over here where I need to drop these horns at a better cutting angle. So what I need to do, again with the burnisher, is I need to introduce this, and then what I'm trying to do is I'm holding this kind of pretty close at 90. This looks good. I need to break 90 degrees. I'm looking for changing the geometry of this from 90 to somewhere in the neighborhood of 85. Anything greater than 85, it's a little bit too frail, or it cuts really aggressively to start with. So if this was 10 degrees or 45 degrees or whatever, it's going to cut beautifully for half of the first cut, and then there's not enough material holding the metal to the scraper, so it's just going to shear off. So holding this into place, breaking 90. So I always start at 90, then just break it a little. Okay, so setting this up here, I like to grab a corner of the bench just to hold it. Some people are able to do this by just holding the scraper freehand, but I like having the bench to support this whole thing, because there's no way I can push it through the bench, and I can really put some pressure onto this if I needed to. I found that the more pressure you apply, safely of course, yeah, that feels pretty great. The more pressure you apply, the easier that metal is going to be to fold over or to roll. All right, I like how that feels. All right, so again, looking at this, if I can zoom in, that would be fantastic. All right, let's see what we did. So putting a little bit of pressure here with my thumbs. Oops. Yeah. Having the right pressure on this, the right grip, made a big difference. But if you can see, this is kind of the goal. I'm trying to get these long shavings here that are all connected, and if I remove the solid stuff, I'm left behind with just a couple of pieces of these shavings, which is not bad. It's difficult to remove those fully. Okay. At this point, I'm just getting carried away. Just in that quick experience here, the friction that's being created is starting to translate to heat, and my thumbs are feeling that. And some people have built up an immunity or a tolerance to that. I guess I'm a bit of a lightweight here. So these little magnetic business cards. These are a good buffer. I can do this and it'll insulate, and I can do this all day, or at least until I need to resharpen. All right, so we have a curly piece of cherry here, and I wanted to point this out because I was scraping in this orientation, and unlike other cutting tools, like a hand plane or even a machining process, where you can only introduce the cutting tool in one orientation, I can flip this one around, which I've done, and I can cut in both orientations, and there's very little opportunity for tearing out. I'll flip this to the other side, starting to get dull already. All right. So the surface of this board, hopefully it's coming through. You can see the figure here, but there's no tear out, and it makes the board incredibly smooth. And the purpose of this, I can easily sand this, but I've always maintained that one of the woodworker's least favorite things to do is sanding, and I am very much in that realm. So if I can minimize sanding, I will do it every single time. The scraper, because of the universal grain direction thing that we can do with it, it makes our life so much easier. Okay, that was scraper sharpening. Hopefully that was helpful. Good luck with sharpening.